Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Um, I'm going to do away with the rest of the disclaimer in this video because we're not making a prediction here, other than to say you have an event coming up. It's Anthony Joshua comes to America to fight Jake Paul. Now understand, life's unfair. I'm not saying that Anthony Joshua right now is at the top of the heavyweight division. What I am saying is that his celebrity is rare in sports, right? I've seen an athlete before who you looked at that athlete, you thought he's good, but he might not be the best in the moment, but yet he was the guy who had the keys to the car. He was the guy who drew the crowd. Right? He was the guy who, if you were sitting in an airport and somebody said, hey, that's Anthony Joshua over there, you would turn around and look immediately. And you would be able to find him easily because all you'd have to do is follow the crowd. Now, he's fighting Jake Paul, and folks, Jake Paul is more of a story than people realize. I've read the emails here. People are saying, oh, this is a joke fight. Jake Paul's fights are fixed. Let me ask a basic question, and I believe this is the question a lot of people are asking. What they tell you in public is bogus. You can look at the numbers yourself for Jake Paul fights, and you know there's a curiosity. Right? The question is, what if his fights aren't fake? What if this guy has a real straight right hand? What if he is hard to catch up with? What if Mike Tyson fought as hard as he could and fell as short as he did? So, I enjoyed Canelo versus Crawford. Crawford, quite frankly, even today is underrated, right? I myself was picking Canelo in that fight. Crawford did well, right? Not that I agreed with the scoring, but Crawford did extremely well, right? But the bottom line is that was a fight for the boxing cognoscente. That was a fight for the people who knew who Crawford was. We all knew who Canelo was, right? That fight had intrigue. From a boxing sense, I'll be surprised, and I mean this, I'll be very surprised if this Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul fight does not do better commercially than that fight did. Understand too, that fight you knew there was a distinct risk, since both of those fighters are very technical, that fight was going to go the distance. Right? Canelo recently has been going the distance a lot. Right? You thought, there is a possibility here. And of course, Crawford's never been stopped. Crawford's unbeaten as I make this video. You thought, there's a possibility that fight turns into a chess match. Isn't that what we thought? You were there watching the first, second round. You thought maybe Canelo has a chance at a stoppage. This is a guy who last fought at 154 against the undisputed at 168. But folks, you know in your heart that this Joshua-Jake Paul fight might not go the distance. You understand that there is the possibility that Joshua comes in, he's 6'6", he's Goliath, he hits harder than Jake Paul. Naturally heavier guy. You understand that Joshua might push the tempo. It's an 8-round fight. Things have to happen. If the fight goes to a decision and it's close, if Jake Paul has won 3 rounds, the fight's a disappointment for the Joshua side of the ledger. Joshua's here to make a statement, not just leave with a win. But if you're on the Jake Paul side of the play, there's another possibility, right? Joshua unlike Canelo, unlike Crawford, is not defensively blessed. Right? You're wondering exactly how this works out. Can Jake Paul throw that right hand high enough to hurt Joshua? If he lands like Daniel Dubois did, is there a possibility that Joshua might be slowed down? If the fight has a certain pacing, there might be a possibility that Joshua might need some of the later rounds. Jake Paul might throw flurries, look charismatic. Again, life's unfair. Fights in Jake Paul's backyard. Maybe Jake Paul wins some early rounds. Maybe Joshua has to go for a knockout, and maybe attentiveness to defense suffers, as Joshua does. So let me just say, this fight is riveting. I don't hear much about it right now, and I'm a boxing fan. But folks, this fight is huge. So, this is totally unsolicited. I expect no one to listen to this, other than my little community here on YouTube. But you're Anthony Joshua. You are top of the food chain, whether or not you have a title. Right? The feeling is, if you could get it together, you might be able to beat Usyk. Right, folks? As I've said here before, Joshua lost the first fight, was something like 9 rounds into the second fight. He buzzed Usyk. Suddenly, life changed. The crowd was into the fight suddenly. We thought after watching 9 rounds, plus 12 rounds, we thought after 21 or 20 rounds or so, that if Joshua just clicked in gear, he would take out Usyk. Right, folks? That's the level we're talking about in terms of public perception of Anthony Joshua. So Joshua enters this fight as Goliath. Let's speculate here. We're offering advice no one's going to take. We're offering advice no one's going to take. You're Anthony Joshua, right? You're coming off a rocky part where you know you didn't look good against Daniel Dubois, right? You understand that England now is looking at some other fighters, Moses Atama, right? But you know privately that there's a group that will always cherish you, right? My dad, by the way, heard that Muhammad Ali was signing autographs at Valley Stream Mall, near where we lived in Queens, right? Valley Stream is, I believe, in Nassau County. And he showed up. Right? He immediately grabbed his shoes, hopped out, jumped in the car. He showed up, and you know the rest. Ali, who had been retired for several years, was there, and there was a crowd. I suspect that's Anthony Joshua several years from now, after he retires. So you're Joshua and you're Goliath. Right? The people who believe in you believe this fight can't even make it to the 5th round. Right? You're Goliath. You're in the United States. You can't come in to Rocky music. Right? You can't come in to music intended for underdogs, which is 90% of the music. Right? You need to come into championship level music, Goliath music. You want to be unapologetic. You don't want to be the tall guy bending over, afraid of his height. You want to enter the room like Shaquille O'Neal. Right? The big man who's dunking. You want to have that Wilt Chamberlain vibe. Right? I'm a Wilt fan. Parts of Wilt's books were cringeworthy. Right? Unapologetic. Right? Jack Johnson level. Right? Where you're, there. They came to Johnson. They said, hey, the NAACP is condemning you because, your behavior isn't model behavior. And all Johnson said was, I'm not a slave. Right? So here is Anthony Joshua in a foreign country, what music should he enter to? Now, the safe bet is Caroline, right? It's built his brand. That song has helped put him on top, right? Joshua can show up and he can stay on brand. But what if he wants to go off brand? And what if he wants to play to the fact that he is alpha? Right? Well, folks, let me make a few suggestions. And again, this is really just for us. Right? I want Joshua picking whatever music he wants. Right? It could be a cousin's band. Whatever music he wants to pub, he can do it. But the songs that I think would really score here. Let's start with Jay-Z. Right? I haven't heard a boxer come into this. I'm a bit surprised. This is a fight where Joshua could come into this. Right? You want an anthem song that has a chorus that by the time you enter the ring, the fans are chanting the chorus. And it's on target here in terms of the messaging. So here is Joshua, former champion, heavyweight champion, former Olympic champion, has been in the game for years, right? Has fought people going back to Vladimir Klitschko. The Jay-Z song is Show Me What You Got, right? Because that's the question in the room. Who's Jake Paul? Real? Fake? Right? Jake Paul has invited Joshua to the United States. That's after the Gervonta Davis fight fell apart. Right? Joshua, would be the establishment. The unapologetic establishment. The idea would be, hey, look, I want to know what you got. Do you have anything at all? The answer might be no. Right? A song for Joshua to consider is Show Me What You Got. It has a lot of energy. It's Jay-Z. I believe the crowd in America would recognize it instantly. It'd be a moment. Now let's get a little bit off script. This is one of those rare fights. I recommended this song earlier for Tyson Fury. This is one of those rare fights where we know Joshua has much more experience than Jake Paul. Right? Much more experience than Jake Paul. We also know Joshua has been in the spotlight long enough where he has critics. Right? Where people are saying, oh, Joshua should have done better against cruiserweight Usyk. Right? Oh, Joshua should have done better against Daniel Dubois. Right? Gee, is Joshua even worthy at this point of fighting Tyson Fury? Not that Fury's had a good run of it lately either. Right? In fact, if you look at common opponents, Francis Ngannou knocks down Tyson Fury, goes the distance, I believe, wins one of the judges' scorecards. By contrast, Francis Ngannou does not make the third round against Anthony Joshua. Otto Wallin is fighting Fury, and hey, that fight goes the distance. Fury can't even stay outside in that fight. Fury has to come crowd Wallin. That's a contentious fight. Against Anthony Joshua, it's Wallin who gets hit with so many hard shots in one of Joshua's best moments. It's Wallin who pulls the plug. Wallin, the guy who went the distance with Tyson Fury, didn't want even to make it to the last third of the fight against Anthony Joshua. So, a guy like this who has a past that we all know, who has had adversity, who has been doubted, if he's defiant and it's a personality thing, if he's a Frank Sinatra type guy, would consider entering the ring with a song that scolds the crowd a little bit. It's Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. The song is If You Don't Know Me By Now. Listen to the lyrics. You know, Teddy Pendergrass, who, believe it or not, joined Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes as the drummer. It took the band a little bit to figure out the guy had the best voice in the group. Just to understand, Teddy in the song says, 10 long years. Right? In other words, Joshua would be telling the fans, if you don't know that I'm going to smoke this guy, and he'd be telling this to the fans on his way into the ring. If you don't know me by now, you will never ever know me. Right? So the song offers a promise he'd have to deliver on in the fight. Right? By the second verse, it would be clear he's scolding the crowd. Right? Joshua would have to be prepared to play the villain a little bit. Now, the third song is a song I thought of really for Deontay Wilder. This is an alpha song. Right? This is the person entering the ring who you know has a past, who you know is on tour with victories, has won, has an entourage around him, and they're rolling. Right? The song is Proud Mary. Let me point out, too, if you don't know me by now, it better be the Harold Melvin version. Right? I don't want any other version for that. Right? Proud Mary, folks, it has to be the Ike and Tina Turner version of the song. It has to be. And the idea is that the song starts slow. The opening verse is Tina Turner talking about the life she's lived. Then it speeds up. Then the crowd could get into it. The crescendo would hit as Joshua enters the ring. Right? Let me add another song, and I believe this applies to Joshua, and I believe this would play to his crowd back home. Joshua is a guy who's changed a lot of trainers. Joshua is a guy who's had Eddie Hearn with him for a long time. Joshua is a British guy who, quite frankly, prefers British trainers and the United Kingdom. Right? The song is Joe Cocker's song. I get by with a little help from my friends. The idea is simply, he shows up, he's paying homage to all the people with him. He understands he's the UK's favorite fighter, at least as heavyweight, even now. Right? So it would be a way to kind of like, if they could mix in a British flag or someone wearing the Union Jack, it'd be a way to convey to fans watching from home, hey, look, man, you've had my back and I'm grateful. Let's talk about Jake Paul. Now, Jake Paul could play the patriotism card. Right? Fights in the United States, where things are contentious right now, by the way. The song is America the Beautiful by Ray Charles. Now, here again, it better be Ray. It's like, it better be Ray. I'm more interested in the voice and the tone than I am seeing some live performer. Right? So, America the Beautiful by Ray Charles, I think that would be interesting. That's just a nationalism play. Right? Another song's a guy who recently died. The lyrics fit this event. Right? Here you have David, Jake Paul, fighting Goliath. Anthony Joshua. The song by Jimmy Cliff is The Harder They Come. Right? I think that would be interesting, especially since Cliff recently died. The last song is a song that scolds the fans. Right? It's a social commentary. It's a social commentary song, quite frankly, if you listen to the lyrics. It's Bon Jovi's Wanted Dead or Alive. Right? That's my list, right? You know, dead or alive, he says it's all the same. Only the names have changed, right? He'd enter the ring and, you know, basically he's saying, you know, the crowd just wants him dead or alive. And, you know, he's answering the challenge. Those are the songs I'm thinking of. Let's Dance by David Bowie has been neglected by boxers. That'd be a great song for either guy. Get the crowd moving, look eager to fight. Nice opening. So, you know, they start playing the song, and then you look at the tunnel and you see the guy come out. It'd be hyped. Let me hear your suggestions in the comments section of this YouTube video. And folks, feel free to disagree with me. I know there's a group out there that feels this is Anthony Joshua fighting a guy from the pub. Right? I'm just telling you, Jake Paul has boxing skills. That's going to be apparent early. Jake Paul is going to get off to the faster start. Right? There is an outsized possibility that this is like the first round of the rematch of Ali against Sonny Liston, where Liston comes out, comes across the ring. Don't let the phantom punch cause amnesia. Liston, who, by the way, was more cheered entering the ring than Ali, right? This is the fight in Lewiston, Maine. Liston comes across the ring, tries to open up on Ali. Let's remember, Liston knocks out Floyd Patterson twice in the first round. Right? You know the rest here. Ali handles it, right? Ali's on his back foot, is gliding across the ropes. Talk about high risk against Sonny Liston. Then, of course, we get the phantom punch that drops Liston in the round. I know there's a group of you out there who believes that the punch was phantom, that it never happened. I understand there's another group who understands that the physics of it, Liston being hyper aggressive, coming forward, getting hit, just like Gene Fullmer got dropped by Sugar Ray Robinson, it could happen here. Liston's momentum working against him. The point of it, though, is Sonny Liston opened up so much that the punch from Ali landed flush. Now, we can debate how hard it landed, but Liston doesn't have a hand up because Liston's overcompensating. What if Anthony Joshua shows up here and decides he's going to make a statement? What if he comes in treating Jake Paul as an amateur? Folks, I'm telling you, Jake Paul has an A-level straight right hand. Right, folks? There's a possibility that either fighter overexerts themselves. Things happen. They could happen here from the opening bell. Right? This is a different fight than Canelo Crawford. Understand, the fan bases are different too. I was online for Canelo, Jaime Munguia, and I'm just telling you, a lot of young Latinos were openly rooting for Jaime Munguia. Right here, you know, U.S., England, folks, I'm guessing the people in the UK feel very strongly that it's one thing for AJ to lose to Daniel Dubois, right? Another British fighter, a guy who has been a professional fighter. Losing to Jake Paul would be completely unacceptable. People are going to be on pins and needles. There's always the concern, too. Whenever I see an American fighter and he's fighting in the UK, I always have to ask myself, is he going to get a fair break? Right? There are those of us who look at that Dillian White, Jermaine Franklin fight and say, what if that fight happened in the United States? How would it be scored? Right? I'm sure we're not alone. I'm sure there are a lot of Australians who look at Joe Parker fights and who are thinking, hey, you know, is he going to get a fair shake? Right? Well, let's just say this fight's going to be combustible from the opening bell. I want people to understand that Joshua is loved. Right? This is the guy who fans roll with him. right? This is a guy with deeper support than people realize, right? I'll make a video about two other fighters. Then I'll draw an analogy to Anthony Joshua, and I'll know the minute I open my mouth on it. 2 or 3 people in the comment section, and my videos don't get like 4,000. 2 or 3 people in the comment section are immediately going to jump to Joshua's defense, right? Joshua has his own defense league, and it's organic, right? These are fans who watched him. These are fans who remember him as the Olympic medalist. Joshua has had dramatic fights. The comeback in the Vladimir Klitschko fight was a great comeback, right? I mentioned Joe Parker. Joshua beat Joe Parker, right? Shot a jab that somehow he seems to lose track of himself in some fights, right? I'll be surprised if this doesn't draw a bigger crowd in part 2, because there's the heavyweight division and there's everyone else. So let's buckle up. In the comment section here, tell us the songs you want the guys to enter the ring to. Recognizing, of course, that Jake Paul's the decided underdog here, that many people in the public doubt him, recognizing that Joshua has had his own trials and tribulations. I look forward to reading your comments. Thanks for stopping by.